Hello everyone. This video took a lot longer than I originally planned to put together, and I've had a lot of difficulty figuring out exactly how I wanted to approach this to make it a little more appropriate for anyone listening. Eventually I just accepted that, like a lot of my thoughts, there's really no good way to put it, so I'm just going to stop stalling and put out the video. As you've seen from the title, we're going to be talking about death today. And it's going to include some discussions of suicide as well. So if that's something that you don't feel that you're in the best state of mind to listen to, I did want to warn you ahead of time. So that said, today I want to take a few minutes to talk about the fear of dying and the fear of death itself, and the difference between those two, at least for me. Now, I know that my ability to enunciate has fallen quite a bit over the years, so I'll do my best to make sure that you can understand what I'm saying. When some people talk about being afraid of dying, they don't really draw a distinct difference between the actual process of dying and the after effect of being deceased. For them, the entire thing is one existentially horrifying whole. For myself, I've always had to view the two aspects separately because they each convey very different feelings in myself. So to begin with, we'll talk about dying itself. The thought of dying is something that doesn't bother me beyond thinking about lost future opportunities or the impact that will have on those that I leave behind. Dying painfully, however, is extremely frightening and at times outright terrifying to me. So it's not that I'm afraid of the loss of existence, but because, as I mentioned before, I am innately fearful of pain itself. And almost any type of death would result in a great deal of pain by its very nature. Pain is part of our built-in survival mechanism and we're naturally averse to it. And with most physical pain, I can find a way to cope with it because I can understand what's going on and think through ways to stop it, or at least understand things that could make it stop. I don't have that same ability to have a thoughtful response when faced with the pain of dying. I've had bad scares surrounding heart and lung problems before, and the worst part of those situations was being unable to catch my breath. That feeling of suffocation with no real understanding of what's going on or having a way to remove that increasing pain and desperation of trying to get oxygen and trying to relieve that pressure. For me, suffocation has always been a big fear of mine because you really can't fight against your body's internal desire and need for oxygen, and that feeling of everything in your body screaming at you to do something when you're powerless to do it. So the fear of a painful death, that's something that I definitely understand, and I'm sure that I share with many other people. The concern over death itself, or rather of being dead, that's just not something that's there for me. I don't subscribe to the belief in any particular afterlife. So for me, the concept of being dead is more of a release from every pain and fear present in daily life. And yes, I know that the concept of death is a relief. And even the way that last sentence sounds is enough for some people who want to put me on a watch list. I understand the feeling, and I'd probably do the same if I heard one of my friends say that. Many of us have had to work with either our own suicidal feelings or those of people who are close to us. And you definitely do want to keep an eye out for those that are close to you who may be dealing with difficult situations. What needs to be understood, though, is that for so many people, there's a very clear understanding of the difference between surviving and living. People can only be expected to go through life at a bare survival level without any joy in the process before the concept of an end to that constant drudgery becomes more appealing than another day of hand-to-mouth existence, especially when there's no hope of any meaningful change coming up. And the concept and the creation of an afterlife where those who suffer through a painful lifetime of servitude and toil shows up in belief systems across the entire world. And it always has been, and in many ways still is, used as a method of maintaining control over large masses of lower class workers by encouraging them of the benefits of staying in their place throughout their life, because they'll be rewarded in the afterlife. And without that promise of an unproven reward, I imagine that both massive revolts and widespread suicides of poor workers would have been much more endemic across history than they already have been. Those in power, though, will always need people to use and control. So, worldwide and across history, they've worked to convince people that to keep living, even if you have a horrible life, is better than ending it. And while there are certainly those who do that out of compassion for their fellow man, there are so many more in power who have obviously done it because they need to make sure that they always have someone lower than them to control and to use. Because more often than not, those in power throughout history have risen on the backs of those below them. And for me, this is one of the more logical ways of looking at the reality of being dead, when, based on our best current scientific understanding, everything that encompasses our concept of self and our ability to view reality is a function of our brains. And all of that ends after that organ ceases to function. Really, after this, all that we would have is nothing. And I can accept that. I can accept that I'd no longer be able to experience anything joyful in life. But I also accept that I no longer have any concept of pain or fear or anything else. What creates an existential crisis for some people and leads to dozens and possibly hundreds of different views on the afterlife across the world just looks like rest to me and many other people. I think that's a very large part of why I'm a consistent proponent for things like death with dignity, assisted suicide practices, especially for those who are experiencing constant, often painful terminal conditions. Whether or not it's the best option for those who are working with treatable mental illnesses is a different factor. But still, if life has reached a point where it contains nothing but pain and the promise of more pain without a way to resolve the underlying issue, then I believe a person should be allowed a peaceful death. Now, you're free to believe whatever you want about death and dying, and hopefully you're able to enjoy your life as fully as possible, so that when the time does come, you'll be able to face the end without regret and hopefully without fear. So as you move through life towards that inevitable death and whatever you believe happens after it, please try to make life as happy and meaningful both for yourself and for those around you. This is the only life we get, and the better we make it, the less likely it will be that people will want to end it early. But those are just a few of my thoughts on it. Just a few more thoughts from an insane bookworm. Everybody, please take care of each other, be happy, and be safe.